All right, so it's a sad fact of the matter that you're always going to have data quality issues with data, and then geospatial data is like kind of more towards the top of that list than towards the bottom in terms of the numbers of problems that you can encounter. This is for a bunch of reasons. One is that you have to have locations tied to names, and typically speaking, and those names can be tough. So if they don't match exactly, you're going to have problems. If there's a name that is, so for instance, it might be a different format, for instance, just a kind of a simple thing. It might be the case that some of the names that are included in your data set are not included in your kind of atlas and your kind of location dictionary. Like you might have a place that was captured in the data set like store 17, but store 17 for whatever reason is not in your list of locations. That's going to cause a problem. And then you have issues related to, there are conflicting names, like maybe the same county in different states, or maybe actually this is data from Brazil, but our location information is US based right now, like lots of different little pieces. Let's see some of these, and we'll continue to uncover others as we go on. So we're going to drag location in as detail as we've done before, just to get something in here. And notice that here, everything is okay. And by that, I mean, we don't see any obvious problems, and that's good. So let me clear this one out, and then I'll do JHU COVID, and notice that everything looks pretty similar, except that I have this little thing down here, the 6 unknowns. So if you're seeing something down there, it's saying that there were fields in the data set for which Tableau could not natively process the location information. So to deal with this, let's click this, this unknown thing, and notice that we have 3 options: edit locations, filter them out, and show as the default position. We're going to explore all 3 of these very, very quickly. So let's do edit locations first. So edit locations basically brings up a list of all the locations and says, okay, you're saying that this state thing here is a capital, but I don't know where the District of Columbia is. I don't know where the Federal Bureau of Prisons is, Northern Mariana Islands, Puerto Rico, U.S. military, and Wuhan evacuees. It's like I don't know what's going on here. Like what am I supposed to do with these values? So to do this, you basically just need to choose from the drop down where you're going to reclassify this. So for instance, we could put all of these things in a particular location. We could put them in wherever you want to put them. You would have to choose, and typically you would want to have a good reason to do that. Like you would want to have a reason to put them in Alabama, for instance. You don't want to just kind of like corrupt the data by putting these things that are clearly not in Alabama on top of the Alabama data source or data mark. So this is probably not our best option. Other thing we can do is by going back to our list here, we can say filter data, and it just removes them. So notice that we should have gotten, okay, good. So notice that on our filters here, if I say unknown and then hit filter data, it's now filtering out those values that it couldn't match up. This is probably your safest bet in the sense that you're not even showing it if you don't have a place to show it. If there's no location in which to show it, then we shouldn't be worried about it. And then the last one, again, in my opinion, is not great. Show data at the default position. This puts it at latitude equals 0, longitude equals 0, which is just south of the western part of Africa. And this is meaningless, right? You're putting them in this particular situation. It's meaningless. So my suggestion here would be to filter them out. One thing I want to point out while we're here, though, is that notice that these dots are located in different positions than they might have been in the past, and this is the nature of geographic role. So if I go to JHU COVID and I say, like let's look at state, for instance, and I say geographic role, it's now a capital. That's how it's being classified. If it's a state or a province, notice what happens. Things move around quite a bit. And in addition to that, things that were unknown to begin with, like Northern Mariana and Puerto Rico, it didn't recognize those as capitals, but it did recognize those as states. And so our number of, in fact, let me just remove this really quickly. Our number of missing values went from 6 to 3 when I changed the geographic role here from capital to state. Now, it may have been different on yours, so play around with these things. Like which one it's natively thinking it is. Is it state or is it capital? But notice that there's a number of different default classifications here. Most of the time, Tableau is pretty good. So for instance, if I look at county and I go to geographic role, it has already picked up as a county, no problem. So for most of these, it's in pretty good shape. I will point out though, quickly, that if I say, let's say filter, and then I expand this hierarchy. So I filtered out all the states that were giving me problems, and I expand this out. Notice that I get new unknown issues here. So dealing with these data quality issues at the state level of detail was not sufficient to fix all the problems at the county level of detail, and that makes sense. There may be counties that have problems. But if I go through and fix these things, first of all, notice that I could change the country region. So if in fact this was not data from the United States, I could change it to Brazil or Argentina or whatever I wanted. But then I can also go through and start to figure out what's going on with these issues here. So I have Air Force, Army, Bear River. So these are like, oh, right, okay. So there was something going on, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, when they were trying to standardize how they were going to report this data. There were some days, so this was reported at the daily level of detail, there were some days where they reported things in just really, really strange ways. Like there were if you look through here, there were individual cruise ships that were being reported at one point, which was just kind of crazy. At the beginning of the pandemic, there was a serious issue that some of these cruise ships were high concentration areas. Regardless, I think you can probably get an idea of what I've been saying, which is that data quality happens. Like for the best, like with the best of intentions, data quality issues still happen. People were just trying to report the data as they had them at the time in the best way they could at the time, and at the same point, this caused problems in terms of how we kind of visualize the data. In this particular data set, turns out this is a small number of points, and it typically is. It's not typical that you have a huge missing point or missing chunk of data like this, or data you can't deal with. So it's probably best just to filter it out, unless you have a very good reason for, like, for instance, like Dukes and Nantucket. This is clearly Massachusetts. You could put that on Massachusetts if you wanted to. But if you don't, typically filtering is the best thing to do. So we still have some other issues related to custom geocoding to talk about, but we'll save that for a future video.